Hello everyone, welcome back again to this channel. Today I'll be going through choosing the right squares that matters in chess and how to attack castle king accurately. Now we've all been in this situation where we're trying to attack our opponent's king, trying to win some material, but due to some tactics and miscalculation, and also because we placed our pieces in the wrong square, we ended up not being able to carry out the tactic perfectly and lost the game instead. And without further ado, let's just get into the position that we have in our screen right now. Now it is black to move. You can pause the video if you wanted to calculate the moves, go through the moves in your head before we went through it. But hopefully you see the light squares being protected nicely in this position, and so we can only attack on the dark squares. But that said, hopefully you can see bishop to e3 being the correct move, and after the king move, well, the queen has to move in anyway. And so the easiest way to do that is to exchange our pair of rooks and to play queen f8 and queen f2. Now we got in, what do we do next? Is to chase the king out into the most uncomfortable square, and that is by playing queen to f1 check. Now we still have one check to go through, and so g5 check is the correct way to go through. But now we reach into the position where we don't have any checks no more, and the only square that we can attack now is the light squares because the king is there, right? So with two choices, first to play queen takes d3, second one probably is to play queen to f8 and to play queen to e8 check, where you then can go to g6, h5, so on. Now, which one is the best move according to the position? Now, it so turns out that one of the moves here is actually passing the torch back to white to win the game. And that move is queen to f8. Now, it does seem like we're giving a check with our queen on e8. And next move will be queen to g6 with h5 checkmate and so on. But white has this resource, that is queen to e4. Now, I can give a check with the queen, but after king g4, h5 check, the king can move to f5, in which there's no queen to g6 check anymore. There's also no queen to e6 check. Next move, white can also play queen to b7, checkmate on the dark squares is possible. And so suddenly white is trying to win this. Now compare that if we had run our queen to d3. Now there'll be no queen to e4, there'll be no queen to e2. The only square they can escape to is to f3, to try to give the king some lift. But this is also just kaput because of the queen to g6 check. The only square to run to is g4. Of course, he can't run to f5 no more, and after h5 check, the only square is to play h3. But here he runs into check, and the fork, he's going to lose his queen, and the rest is just going to be history. And so more than anything else, I think we really have to care about our opponent's resources. As you can see, the move queen takes d3 and or queen to f8 to go to e8 really does attack the light squares, but it's just not enough when the opponent has the resource to defend whatever we throw at him. Now hopefully that does make some sense in that choosing the right square is really crucial in the game of chess, and one slip and one wrong choice can really pass the torch back to your opponent to win the game. Now we're on to the second position. As you can see, white is attacking the black queen here on f6, but it's not really too difficult to see the intermediate move of rook to g2 check. The problem is, after the king h1, where do you really go with the queen? Now I believe everybody watching will probably wanted our queen to really drop on h3 and call it a checkmate, right? It's the easiest way to go to. But which way to go? Is it going to be queen to e6 to attack h3? Or is it going to be queen to h4 to then drop the queen onto h3 checkmate? It's probably checkmate either way, but the opponent has resource if you move your queen to h4. And that is by playing bishop to c2 check. And that is something that I miss as well when I played this tactic. Certainly hurts a lot of crap for me. But the key idea is that you can't really block with the bishop to g6 because queen takes f3, that protects h3, and that's no longer checkmate. You can even want to move the king to g7, but then with that is bishop to f5, now also protecting the h3 square, and with that stopping checkmate once and for all. In fact, just because white is up a piece here, he's already better. Now what black needs to do is to play queen to e6, and so after bishop to c2 check, we can simply block it with king to h8, and after bishop to f5, the queen is there protecting the f5 square. I can just gulp the bishop, and next move will be queen takes h3 checkmate. And so against this one of the classic example to stop your opponent's counterplay by choosing the right square. As you can see, both queen to h4 and queen to e6 does attack h3, but the most important thing is the counterplay from your opponent, which is bishop to c2 check, and stopping once and for all with bishop to f5. Now we're on to the second last position. This position is somewhat different from the two that we saw just now, and so you might want to pause the video to see if you can find a solution to this puzzle. But with that pause, I really hope that you can find queen to d3 as a continuation, in which after king to f2 to run. There is a very sick move, in which that choosing a right square can also mean retreating your piece, which is very uncommon in tactic. Usually you want to attack in tactics, but this one involves retreating. And that move is rook to g6. That is one crazy move. Probably something that I'll never find without the help of the engine, but this does open the eye a bit, in that the black's rook is really blocking the bishop's position to come in and check the white king. And so by moving the rook back, the next move is going to be bishop to h4 check, and that's going to be lethal for white. Now of course white can take the bishop on e7, but then goodbye dark squares with queen to e3 and rook to g1 checkmate. Now if white doesn't do that, let's say it plays rook to g1 to challenge the rook right here, to take out one of the attacker, then bishop to h4 is going to come in, and there will be no way to stop the checkmate really, with pawn takes g3 next. Now after king back to g1, we can play pawn takes on h2, and after king h2 we can just come in, that's checkmate. And if not that, let's say if pawn takes g3, that is rook takes f3, rook g3, and that's also just a mate. And so yeah, it can take a form of retreating your pieces, allowing nearer pieces to come in with a more devastating attack than the one that you have currently. Some crazy stuff. I hope that can be an eye-opener as well for everybody's watching. Now on to the last puzzle. This probably ain't too hard considering the pattern that we saw in the last 3 puzzles. But go on ahead and pause the video and try to find a solution to this as the last practice of this video. But the move right here to play is rook takes on g2. Now this forces the king to take, in turn, straddling the defense open for the white king so that we can attack easily. Now, with queen to f3 check and or queen to d5 check, that gives the same check of the light squares. The king pretty much has to run to the same square, which is g1. But which one is the most correct square for the check? The answer has to be queen to d5 check. Now, if queen to f3 check is played, white plays king g1, but then there's pretty much nothing, right? We can play rook to g8 check, but then that's going to be blocked by rook to g4. Furthermore, you might want to see that if the king is here, the rook's here, there might be some chances of forking with the knight. Now we take the square away from the knight. That might not be good for our overall prospects. And so with that said, queen to d5 is the most correct check. Now with that said, queen to d5 is the most correct check for us. White has a couple of options as to how he wants to get out of check. The first one and the most critical one is to play king to g1. Now from here we must find every move with a check, because if not, let's say if we play knight to f3 check, say king to f1, and say if we play knight to h4 thinking that we can win some material, then suddenly bishop to c5 check, queen a7 check, and this mess is not worth for us to get on. So let's say queen to a8 here and rook takes b7 check, not worth. And so we want to move every move with a check. We want to find every move with a check. So I said knight to f3 check, and after king to f1, there's one more check here, which is queen to d3 check. And let's say after king to g2, rook first comes to g4 check, and there's a check, check. That will be a very simple mate. You can even want to place knight to h4 as well, but this is somewhat slow. You can play rook to g4 here. Okay, but too slow. So what I want to do is to play rook to g8 first, and to play these, and lets you to a quicker checkmate. Again, the king comes to g2. This is parking the queen alongside with the queen right here. And so yeah, this is knight h4 check, and let's say if king f1, queen d3 check, that will be a simple mate right here with knight to g2. And if he just comes to g1, well, I believe he can also just take the rook. This is kaput without any sayings. The other options will to play rook to e4, blocking the checks. Seems pretty cool. Bishop to c5 check is still the plan pretty much. But here we have rook to g8 check that we talk about. Nothing can block g4 anymore. The king has to move. And after that, knight takes on e4 is winning. White here can try bishop to b6 check, and after king to b8 to play queen a7 and queen a8. But there's really nothing stopping it. The rook is being protected by the queen. So the only way to stop the checkmate will be something like queen to g8. And yeah, this is pretty much losing the queen. White probably has one more try, and that is probably like bishop to b6. And after king b8, bishop to c7. This is a critical test for black. And that is if black takes on c7. Then suddenly queen to a8 check. That is crazy move. Because after queen to a8, then knight takes c7. That's a fork taking the queen back. So yeah, something that we might want to be careful of. Black doesn't have to take, of course. Black can just move to c8. where after queen to a8, this is the same thing. We can run to d8, and pretty much the rook's still protected. Threat is knight to f2 checkmate. So yeah, that was really our last puzzle. Hopefully that recurring patterns can really help you recognize that the square on the chessboard is really important. Which one that you choose to check your king and to basically launch an attack is very important for your future prospect. Hopefully with that practice as well, you might become a very sharp person to prevent your opponent's counterplay and also your opponent's shenanigan, so they won't have to trouble you when you're trying to win a game or something. And so yeah, that's pretty much the video. If you learned something, please consider pressing and smashing the like button. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.